Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Sloppy Lab. I'm JT Russell. This is Bottom of the Beaker, the weekly show about the design ducks. And oh my gosh, how long has it been? I'm already messing it up.
Been too long.
My co-host tonight is saying that it's been something like 3,457 interludes, but finally, quick draw, finally, we're back. Third season, same as the first, a little bit sloppier and a whole lot worse. Uh,
Yeah, I
yeah.
didn't think I thought we'd be canceled by now. I mean, we made it longer than the Acolyte. Who knew?
You know what? They keep trying to shut us down, but they've been. This is their problem. They go after our sponsors, thinking that they can get our funding pulled. And little did they know, they are only increasing our power by deepening our pockets.
They with a capital T.
They with a capital T. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, welcome back to you folks in listener land. And welcome back, of course, Quick Draw. So glad to be back in the lab for regular episodes of Bottom of the Beaker again. Yeah.
Yeah. We always say when we do these interludes, we're gonna like do a refresh, kind of like get some new ideas, maybe get some new tech. We have a beautiful new splash page that you kind of created during the interludes with some ducks and other things. And just to make sure that we were still the same group, we did have some technical difficulties starting tonight. So we are still Sloppy Lab Work, no worries. It's the same crew here, just a different season.
That's right. So yeah, there's there's a non-zero chance that my audio will cut out for everybody except me. I don't know, and I'll just keep plowing on, and Quick Draw will scream at me into his chat. But unless he screams really loud, I won't hear coming all the way from Central PA.
Yeah. Central PA.
Eastern, Mid Eastern. I don't know. I'm terrible with geography. What would you
Oh,
say?
wow. I mean, I'm very, very clearly Western PA.
I mean, well, everything was kind of west of where I was. I guess. I don't
Yeah,
know.
I used to, you know what? It's funny you say that because so I'm in Pittsburgh and which is obviously Western PA.
hmm
Everything east of me, I consider Eastern PA. Whether that's
Okay.
like Johnstown or Carlisle or Harrisburg or Philly or just outside of Philly, as all of my college friends used to say they were from, which just outside of Philly, when you're in Pittsburgh and someone tells you that, it means anywhere else in the state, pretty much.
Uh huh.
So I kind of understand where you're coming from. Everything east of me, I just consider Eastern Pennsylvania.
Yeah. I mean, like I knew you were west of me, but it's like it kind of yeah, exactly. It gets a little blurry, a little blurry. Like my geography from living in the Boston area was like yeah, there's Boston itself and then there's like 2 hours outside of Boston and that's all of Massachusetts and you're done.
That's it.
Yeah. So you have a similar thing going you have a similar thing going for sure.
Yeah.
But enough sloppy geography. I don't know. Easily my worst subject in school by bar none, aside from languages. But except for those two, they were all great. I don't know.
Comments in the chat are good. New Jersey is Eastern PA. I agree with that. That sounds right to me.
Okay, okay. See, you're I don't know lost on me because it could be. It could be. Though I have family in New Jersey. I don't know. We should just do the sloppy ultimate frisbee podcast. Quick draw. There are an awful lot of
Hmm.
discers in disc golfers, maybe mostly, but there was a wonderful disc golf tournament, beach disc golf tournament on the Jersey Shore that I went to every year for a longest time, and it was delightful, delightfully everything you'd imagine it is.
Well,
But
I would not be a part of the sloppy disc golf podcast. I am not a disc thrower of any sort.
mhm. Could we entice you if we started bidding chains on discs? Like
Absolutely. If there's a very, if I'm able to analyze the discs and determine which one's better, then I think that would be fair.
ooh, exactly. And the chat's got it right. The marketing does itself. The sloppy lab work. Disc golf Discord server. Oh my goodness, so good. I love it. But anyway, we've only begun. We've already digressed. It can only go
Yeah.
up from here. I don't know. We have a fun topic in store. I think a fun topic in store. Something that's been uh, on my mind a decent amount in the interlude season, as it were. Um, Simple question, I guess, with maybe a lot to unpack in it. So, what is the ideal length of a game of Keyforge in turns? And yeah, that's that's kind of what we're going to be hashing out today, this evening, this morning, wherever you happen to be. Um, we have a little bit of data we can get into, very little bit of data we can get into. We put out a survey for some folks to get some quick hits on what kind of they felt gut check was a good length of a game, and also we did kind of some reflection on game logs and stats from our own records, so we can get into that too. Um, but maybe a good place to start is kind of like, what do we even mean by ideal? Like what it like? Is there such a thing as too short or too long? Like, what do we have to even be worried about here?
Hmm.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's intentionally vague, as you described it, I would say. And this is a question that you first posed probably sometime during the Winds of Exchange period, where we're trying to like try out good decks in Winds of Exchange, see what worked. And we had settled on a good deck in Winds of Exchange would always check for key three by turn seven. Doesn't mean that it would win at the start of turn eight. It just meant that you're checking for key three. And if you were not checking for key three at the end of turn seven, you were too slow. And I think we all agreed that that was a much different definition of like a fast game compared to anything in the sets prior to that. And so like we were interested, like, do we think that checking for key three by turn seven, rather like in our definition here of the poll that you made, a turn eight turn game, is that too fast? Is that just right? And what do we find, like you said, ideal? Like we can define it any way we want. Like, is it something that you enjoy as a player? Is it something that you think is competitively fair? Like, what is the length of game that you think would be ideal in the sense that you're still enjoying the game, you're not feeling like it's dragging on, but you also feel like you're able to compete, and that it's still a game, and it's not just kind of been decided for you know a long time before you get to the actual official conclusion of the game.
Absolutely. And this is not to like throw shade on folks who enjoy a shorter game or a longer game. I myself very much enjoy the grind fests. You know, I love throwing down some longer games and pulling things out. Um, but you know, from a design standpoint, I have to wonder, or you have to think that there's probably some sort of sweet spot. You know, you imagine a distribution of game lengths that get seen in the wild. You know, maybe there's a nice peak somewhere, and maybe there's some outliers, but um, that peak that you're maybe designing for, there's some trade-offs, right? There's sort of an excitement to a shorter game, like, oh, these things are happening quickly, like what's going to happen, how's it going to resolve, and it's very fast and exciting. And then there's sort of this tension with the lack of agency. Okay, as we speed things up, maybe I have less room to respond or pull answers out of my deck, right? There are fewer turns for me to like put together a response to a very quick assault. On the flip side, games go out longer. Okay, maybe there's some room for some strategic depth to shine through in the game and how things are playing out.
Hmm.
But, you know, does the game still feel like it has some element of inertia that's bringing it towards a conclusion, or are you just kind of fatiguing your players? And so there's kind of these trade-offs on either end, and I believe sort of a sweet spot. Now the sweet spot is maybe something that's idealized, right, to us, and maybe even to each individual. And then there's also kind of the reality, like what are we seeing? What are the kind of game lengths that we're seeing in practice? But for me, I think as we're talking about ideal, yes, it's one that strikes a nice balance between those trade-offs on either end, provides enough excitement without taking away your kind of a sense of agency and ability to impact the outcome of the game, while at the same time, going long enough to feel like there's room for you to put together a strategic plan and not just kind of always be shooting from the hip without kind of fatiguing your players, right?
Hmm.
That's kind of the balance what I'm trying to like tease out here. And then yeah, of course, are we there, and is that kind of matching up with how folks are looking at the game today, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you used the term inertia, and you had an image, screenshot up when you started the show here for those watching on Twitch, of a Mark Rosewater article, 10 things every game needs. And number five on his list was inertia, which he meant something in your game that moves it along towards completion. And I thought a really cool quote in there was, "A well-crafted game should end before the player wants to stop playing."
Mm-hmm.
And so if you have someone who's been playing a game of Keyforge for 25 turns, they might feel it. They're probably starting to feel at that point like I have other things I could be doing besides finishing this game. I think a lot of people really, especially early on in Keyforge, really grappled on because it was like a fast, quick paced game, like as opposed to other TCGs that might take like an hour for a game, where you could finish Keyforge games early on in like 20 minutes sometimes. So 25 it was a long game. So like thinking about it in terms of time, yes, but also turns, because turns are more mechanically tied to this game. Where if you have a number of turns, maybe you assume you play like 3 cards a turn, and that would put you at like about 12 turns before you see your entire deck. And so I think that kind of context is important in this discussion, because we're not just thinking about time. It's actually, time is probably secondary in this conversation about how long should a game last, because we want to look at this from like the design standpoint and from the strategic standpoint of like, do you have the ability to have interplay against your opponent for having time to see all the cards that you need, for example, or having the agency to make decisions that impact the game. And we've talked before in the show, like if you have a shorter game, say like 5 turns, one player might only see 10 or 12 cards in their deck over that time, and they may not even have the ability at all to respond because the cards they need are in the bottom 2/3 of their deck. So we're really focused on that part of it, of being able to still have a competitive game with some back and forth, to showcase some player skill. How many turns in a game is too few to do that? How many turns is too many, where it just doesn't have the return on value and return on investment anymore? And kind of just what do people just want subjectively? Like what do they say? Like, yeah, like to me, this is how many turns is about right for me.
Hmm. Let's push on. Let's push on that like too long idea, since we're kind of here with this inertia concept. Um, I I'm kind of making up this number, right? Like I feel like most games of Keyforge, if they go on past the point where you flipped your deck twice, it's maybe you're sort of like, ooh, is there still that element of inertia pushing this game forward? And like, okay, yeah, I get it. Like when we're talking about tokens, hiding some cards for you on subsequent passes and this and that, like this gets thrown out the window a little bit. But ignoring that and ignoring kind of the self discarding from my deck strategies, that you'd see in Grim Reminders, when you've reached a certain number of turns where you're now starting to see each of the cards in your deck for a third time, I'm like, yeah, maybe it doesn't feel like there is that element of inertia in general anymore. Um, and so to me, that happens right around the like 18 to 20 mark. So if you have a lot of games in like the 18 to 20 turn mark, this is where I'm starting to think like, oof, maybe this is a little bit longer, or somewhere on the outlier. And I do say this as a person who like loves to play those grindy decks that drag the games out. But again, we're talking broad strokes. That's kind of where my mind's at, and that's kind of where my head would be at as a designer making cards for the game, right? I'd be thinking like, I want to be making cards that are closing out the game, kind of before we get to that like third time through the deck.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. Does
Yeah.
that kind of make sense?
Um,
Yeah.
20 turns about lines up with my thoughts too. I think there's also a difference, like you mentioned, Grim Reminders, milling cards, Winds of Exchange, tokenizing cards. You don't really see them per se. I also think that there's a distinction between older Logos decks that have a lot of archiving and drawing that will get you there faster,
Mm-hmm.
whereas a deck with zero efficiency, maybe you're literally seeing and having the choice to play or discard every one of those without having the ability to archive a bunch until you're set up. So I think there are definitely like some asterisks we could put into this, but I think if you're playing past the second shuffle and you don't have a lot of ability to archive key pieces, if you're really just playing like a low F deck where you're just like getting through the cards and you're still not getting close enough to completion, or neither player's getting close enough, that might be the point where it's too long. Yeah. But if you still have some agency to say, like, okay, I'm going to archive this to make sure that I have this right at the right time. Maybe you want to make a bunch of creatures on the board as soon as they use their only board wipe. And so you could maybe archive a bunch of creatures from one house, and then as soon as they get rid of their gateway to dis, you just drop them all.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of thing could be a strategy to give you some agency that will push the game towards completion. That is not just like, well, I'm playing my cards, but I'm not getting any closer to winning.
Mm-hmm. And it's funny. I can't think of very many decks that fall into this camp consistently, into this bucket consistently, right? Like yes, there's Heart of the Forest, and I think this bullet point in Rosewater's article, number 5 on inertia, is a prime indicator of why Heart of the Forest is maybe an interesting design, but not necessarily a fun design or one that's like good for the game. Done too often. Um, but aside from that, you've maybe got some Shadowstorm recursion type shenanigans. Maybe some decks that are gonna replay Ceaseforge over and over. But even
Hmm.
those, I think, that we've seen have traditionally had other tools to close games out. Um,
Yeah.
so, yeah, I don't know. I,
Yeah.
I don't see too many that happen here. So it's not one that I worried about as much, to be honest. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, for me, like I don't personally love the long games, but I've had literally a 44 turn game before, and I loved every second of it because it just really felt like a matchup where your decisions mattered. And yeah, it took a long time to get there, and not every person would have enjoyed that. Um, there could be a lot of 44 turn games that I would hate, but this is one that I happen to enjoy just because it did feel like I had that ability to influence the outcome, and I was working towards a conclusion or a tipping point, really. Um, but that was an exception for me. I do think that in general, I don't like anything over 20, but that's personal taste. Like everyone's going to be a little bit different. Maybe other people are okay with that, and maybe other people say like 15 is too many. Maybe some people say 25. So we know this is like a subjective thing, and that's kind of what we were interested in hearing about as far as like what's ideal for you. And so I guess we could either talk about like what's too short, or we can kind of go into what some of the poll results kind of indicated. Which way do you want to go first?
Let's go into kind of too short and maybe talk about what sorts of things start to break down from like a design and a gameplay standpoint when games are running shorter. So I I love to play. I enjoy games, Keyforge games, when it feels like I'm playing small ball, right? Or when like the singles, the stolen bases, like
Hmm.
matter, right? And it's not just home run derby. And I think once you start getting into the like 5 turn, 6 turn game range, the singles, the stolen bases, they like get washed away. They kind of get like washed out as background noise against some of the big swings, right? Um,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
DT is like small ball.
DT is
That's why
definitely
I
small
love it
ball.
so much.
It's
Like
definitely small ball.
you definitely want to like, you have some decisions to make that are gonna, be important, like how you use your limited creature control or how much you're gonna fight, like that kind of stuff. The incremental advantage I think is great. Um, and yeah, like I played some games where I was playing kind of a fun deck, and I would be matched up against a Grim Reminders Archon tier deck, and the game be over in 6 turns, and I had seen like 12 cards maybe, because like sometimes when you're behind early on and they have like a runaway board or something, you just need to be like, well, I'm just going to play a board wipe and do nothing else this turn. And so you might see fewer cards. I've had games where I don't see like 25 cards from my deck and I lose. And that's not a good feeling because I don't feel like I actually had an ability to impact that game. I had no way of drawing more cards, playing more cards, doing anything. And that's why I do think it's important that the games are able to last long enough that both players have the ability to influence the outcome. And sure, like draws are going to happen. Like sometimes maybe someone draws really well, but I think what we've seen with a lot of the best Winds of Exchange and Grim Reminder decks is that they are able to accelerate to the end game way faster than prior sets could.
Hmm. So this is an interesting question for you, Quick Draw. Do you feel like you should be able to see all of the cards in your deck in a typical game, or are you okay at like you get to the end of the game? I saw only 75% of my deck, but this still feels like a uh, still feels like a good showing. Good showing from the
Mhm.
deck. Still feels like it was a reasonable game.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you need to see everyone. I think it's good to have some variance in that. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you don't want to say, like, you get to see every single card, and if like, you can't win until your opponent sees every card, something like that. I wouldn't want that. I want that variance. I think good games have a little bit of chance and luck involved in them, just like Keyforge does. So I'm not going to say that yeah you need to see every card, but you need to at least have the ability to make some decisions that will extend the game to the point where you can see more of your answers.
Totally. Oh, yo, welcome, Fudge. Welcome with the raid. Thanks so much. And quick hello to Floximal, Data Forge, Ketzer, Cloggin, Jupiter. Welcome. First time, Jupiter. Glad to have you here. Did I miss anybody? We got Zoc. Awesome. Awesome, folks. Um, yeah, yeah. Good to be back. And man, I don't know. I go back and forth on this. I think, and as we're homing in on kind of how we feel about our kind of idealized game length, my I feel like my sweet spot is sort of in the like the 75 to 125% of my deck. Like I like that. I like that variance baked in. That's not too hot, not too cold, just right. Um, where yeah, maybe I didn't see the last eight cards, or maybe I saw just the right eight cards on a flip, and that made all the difference. So I think there is kind of a sweet spot there, and yeah, this maybe is a great time to kind of start transitioning into some of the data that we saw. But as you're thinking about typical games, how quickly you move through your deck, if you'd imagine, yeah, I draw three cards a turn, play draw three cards a turn, what have you. With the starting six, that puts you at roughly 10 redraws until a flip, right? So I looked back on some of my old game logs. Kind of had been saving game logs for a while, and I stopped a decent time ago. It was actually might have actually been pre Winds of Exchange. So I don't know how recent the data is. Um, but I saw that my redraws were happening primarily in the turn like 8 to 11 range. A few in the like 7, a few in the 11, but it was very consistent. The like 8 to 11, that's when we flip the deck and start going over to the next one. And even more heavily clustered. 8 was a little bit of on the lower end, so it was in the like 9 to 11 range. So
Mm.
really that like 9 to 11 range was kind of a sweet spot for the decks that I was playing, right? Granted, this is like a very biased sample. But that gave me sort of like an anchoring point as I'm thinking about game length. A little bit shorter than that, yeah, cool. I'm not seeing quite everything. A little bit longer, yeah, I'm seeing some things again, but it's not everything again. And that was kind of where I started to anchor some of my thinking on like how I feel like this should play out. Um,
It's interesting that you track that, and I think it's really good information and data to track because every deck's going to be different. You're going to have some decks that are going to flip by turn 7, but having that perspective to say like, yeah, I'm playing a deck that's going to take me 11 turns to flip it is interesting because if you're on turn 5 or 6 and you're not even halfway through your deck, you might realize like I'm not making the pace I normally do,
mhm,
and perhaps I need to see more of my answers or play more of my cards, or I'm not going to find those answers. And having an understanding of how your deck normally performs and what pace you're on within a game, I think could give you some interesting strategies and things to consider as you progress through the game. Not that you always want to be going towards that goal, but I think just it's really interesting that you track that. Like I never would have thought to track like how many turns does it take me to shuffle, but now that you mention it, I think that's a great data point. And I think it's a great thing to think about when you're thinking of perspective of like how many more turns is this game going to last,
mhm.
and am I going to be able to see the bottom of my deck by the time that comes up?
Hmm. So not to diminish myself in your eyes too much, but what I actually saved was just the game logs themselves from TCO, right? And then it was very easy to pull out the turn that reshuffles and deck flips happened. So I had the whole like game log in entirety just saved for a whole bunch of games, and was able to
You
kind of
say not to diminish myself here, and what you ended up saying was like, well, I actually recorded everything.
I didn't have the foresight for this specifically, but had it all the data, all the raw data saved. But also was able to then get how long did those games go and get kind of a distribution from that too, which was kind of fun to look back at. So I can
Yeah.
pull that up. And big shout out to Zenzik, who's been putting together a reboot of the Crucible tracker, which is really exciting to see. And they had about 100 games or so of data to pull for us that we'll take a look at too. But
I actually I think no, I don't want to like do a disservice to what Zenzi's doing. I wouldn't even call it a remake of the tracker. I would say it's a totally different thing. Um, it is the same concept in general, where you can look back at your game logs, but they've been including so many interesting pieces of data from those games and extracting that. It's been very cool to see the progress. They're building it they're building it personally, but they're sharing a lot of information in our server on Discord. So if you want to check it out, come visit our server. There's a channel for it and kind of see the progress that they're making on that. It's very cool.
yeah, very cool to see. And they were nice enough to share some of the aggregate data from games that have been tracked while they're kind of doing the initial testing here. And I have that. I guess I can show it real quick on stream. Thank you very much, Zenzi Nezik, for allowing us to share this with folks. Kudos to you. And we're looking at kind of just frequency of turn counts that were achieved over the tracked games. And I believe, quick draw, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that we are counting sides in if we're taking the baseball analogy as opposed to full innings. So I take a turn, you take a turn, I have turn one, you have the second turn of the game, even though it's both of our turn ones. Does that make sense?
I think so.
So when we see 20 on this chart, that is actually the 10th full turn, as it were. A big spike in the in the 16 to 20 range, which would be turns 8 to 10. Makes sense?
And this is again saying that the game ends
Ended
on those turns,
on
right?
those
So if you
turns.
if you check for key 3 on turn 7 and you forge key 3 on turn 8, that's an 8-turn game, even if you didn't play your 8th turn.
Right. The game ended on the 8th turn. So either somebody forged their final key at the start of turn 8, meaning they effectively did all of their racing through turn 7 and then won on the 8th turn, or they managed a key cheat on the 8th turn, that sort of a thing. Yeah, I believe that's what it means. Yeah.
I wonder if these count early concedes, because there is one there that looks to be about turn 6, which is, well, 6 turns played, so turn 3. That would be an interesting game there.
Yeah.
And then the other end of the spectrum, there is one that's like 36, 37 turns played, so it would be like 18 or 19 is approaching what we consider to be probably almost too long at that point.
Yeah. And yeah, sorry, Zach. Uh, don't have tons of insights into where these games are pulled from. I can tell you a little bit more about mine. Think of this as, I guess, a grab bag, but primarily clustered, I believe, on a couple players who are doing the testing of their tracker. I have some of my own. I'll share that as well too. Again, I do love playing some decks that are a little bit grindier, and these numbers are again largely pre-woe. So you're seeing Zyger in its full glory, dragging things out into the bitter end, and I am counting full innings here, not sides. So that 21 turn game is a true 21 turn game for both players, right? But a big spike on 10. These games, the ones that I save logs for, are typically league matches as opposed to random matches on the competitive queue. So things like NKFL, that sort of a thing. And I've got a decent spike in the sort of 10 to 13 range, and then things kind of dropping off outside of that. And again, this is kind of some older data, but kind of where I was at and what kind of anchored me there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So can we go over to what people thought was ideal for them? Want to look at that data?
Yeah. So we just kind of walked through some of what we had been seeing in the wild from our own games that have been tracked, and we also wanted to ask folks just gut check, like, what do you think ought to be how long games last in turns. This is a racing game, so your speed at which you're racing is kind of keys per turn, I guess. I don't know. And the person who could do 3 keys fastest measured in turns is going to win. And we asked folks how many turns that ought to take. We saw a huge spike, so I guess let's not oversell this. We sent the survey out a couple days ago. We've got I think 20 responses so far. 20 responses so far. Of those 20 responses, 9 folks said 10 turns was the number for them, and then 9 and 11 had 3 responses each. 12 got 2, and the rest got 1. And one blessed soul out there said it should take 18 plus. And oh geez, why did I agree to play against JT Russell? And there were a lot of actually very kind of insightful and interesting comments. We left some free form comments for folks to kind of chime in on, give some context on what they were thinking. It was left intentionally open-ended and vague, and folks had a chance to kind of let us know what they were thinking too. And we're trying to incorporate that in the discussion, but we're obviously not going to step through in front of y'all here. Yeah.
Numerically, though, like the takeaway is that people hovered around 10. 10 plus or minus 2 was, I would say, the vast majority of these responses. A couple outliers, one at 6 and one at 18. But for the most part, 10 turns is where people landed for how long a typical game of Keyforge should last. And I was one of those people that voted 10. I think 10 just kind of seemed like the standard to me. It's early on in the game, 10 turns was a pretty normal, I would say, maybe on the slightly fast end, unless you're playing rush decks, which would go slightly faster than that. But 10 feels good to me. 10 feels like you have enough chance to draw your cards and make some decisions. If we're going by about 3 cards a turn, you're seeing more than 75% of your deck, which was the benchmark that you had made. And so I think the general consensus among players is somewhere around 10, 8 to 12, we could say,
Hmm.
focused on 10.
Yeah, and thinking practically, like bringing the game mechanics kind of into the picture, 10 turns, if you're kind of spreading things out, right, means that you got to uh, call every house at least 3 times if you wanted to, right? So, getting back to where things break down in shorter numbers, right? A 5 turn game, what, two of those houses, one of those houses at least, you did not get to use the cards that you played. And for the other two, assuming you spread everything out evenly, like if you wanted to use a card played, like reap with a creature, action, fight, or use an artifact, right, it had to be in your hand the first time you called that house, meaning that you had to like, if your answer to the thing that your opponent is doing is a thing that has to be on board and get used, it had to be drawn the first time by the time the first time you called a particular house, which is just a really high bar, right? That's a high bar, and that's kind of what drove me towards more like this 10 number, which is like, yeah, we're gonna get a chance to play or use things at least for 2 turns after having called it a first time. 10 is again right around that sweet spot of when folks are typically flipping over a deck. So, you're going to be finding answers often, hopefully in time, but, maybe not always. There's still room for variance. But yeah, I went with 10 as well. And my kind of answer was driven largely by like when decks tend to flip over and wanting to have enough room to like find the cards that I need to play and use before the game's over. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, so we're on the same page there, I think. Um, I think an extension of this then, or like rather the next logical question is thinking about, if a game should last about 10 turns. We've talked a lot in the past about early game, middle game, late game, and kind of different strategies involved. I believe it was episode 49 where we talked about that. And I think this also gives a good frame of reference for, where you would put those turns, so where you would put those kind of phases of the game, and how you're playing in each of those turns. And so, if you expect a game to last about 10 turns, and just having that knowledge, like, yeah, this game and this matchup, 10, 12 turns maybe it should go, knowing when to pivot, which turn is like, okay, I need to start making my move to the middle game, or I need to maybe start making my move to close this one out. Otherwise, I'm just not going to be able to get across the finish line first. So, do you think about the early, middle, and late game in the context of the number of turns like this now?
Uh, I don't know that I put it in those buckets specifically, but I think they do map. I find myself counting turns very often when I'm in the like 7 to 10 turn range, and I mean counting turns ahead to like, oh gosh, my opponent is going to win in 3 turns given what's on board and what I know they're about to draw. Uh, and then mapping back like what I need to do, what needs to happen from my end to make sure I either win first or stop them from doing that thing. And like I think that's almost certainly a like end game mentality, right? Kind of what we were talking about in that episode, um, and like yeah, measuring out who's got how much gas left, and then can I make it over the finish line before I run out of gas, or make you run out of gas. So in my mind, that's definitely in the like end game phase and tends to happen when we're 2 to 3 turns from a player winning or presenting a winning threat. So absolutely, you were kind of in like the end game at that point. Early and middle, I
Hmm.
guess, are a little bit looser to me, but I don't know. How do you kind of see them in those same ways?
If I had to put, I was thinking about putting numbers on them. Like early game, I'd say like it's 2 to 3 turns, depending on how many cards you see and which houses you call early on. But you're trying to like set up like that. And middle game would be like the 3 to 4 turns after that, maybe 5 turns, and then the end game could be anywhere from 2 to 3 turns, maybe 2 to 4 turns, if you misjudge how long it's going to take you. And so I think, yeah, I mean, I'd kind of loosely define it like that. But I think the other thing I think of here is that, you talk about how a 5 or 6 turn game you don't get to see enough. If we think about that in the context of the phases of the game, a 5 turn game doesn't really have the ability to have a real early game, mid game, and end game. You're really just like all gas, start to finish. It's over before you even realize it. And I think not having those phases appear in the game really takes the skill out, because I think a good game and I think a good game of Keyforge should have each of those 3 phases, because there are different strategies and different ways to approach it as a player. You could be a very good early game player and maybe not a great end game player, or vice versa. Or maybe you are a very good middle game player, but you struggle with the bookends. And I think if you have a short enough game that doesn't have these defined phases, you're not really testing yourself as a player in all aspects that you could be. And
Hmm.
so I want a game that's long enough that's going to test all 3 of these different skills of being able to play in the early, the middle, and the end game.
Hmm. I like that a lot, with some caveats. So I like I like the idea that there can exist decks that try and break that system a little bit, but they should have a downside, right? There should be
Yeah.
some sort of drawback. It shouldn't be a deck that can put out must answer threats turns 1 through 3, and then also have gas for the late game and a strong middle game too, and all kind of the elements that go along with it. So looking at something like Rector, like here we go, season 3 starting off right, talking about Rector right off the bat. But like one of the things that it does really well is it has a high density of witches, right? Like lots of really really good first turn plays that you kind of need to answer, or you get buried in advantage, and that's uncomfortable for a lot of decks because they need to deviate from their like early game setup plan just to kind of answer threats, right? But Rector's an incredible deck with holes, with some holes, right? And that's part of its charm. But I think that's a healthy kind of way for a deck like that to be. Similar, like you think about your prototypical Coda Rush decks, like I think yeah, getting kind of those rush strategies as part of the mix is healthy and great, but they shouldn't have everything else to go with them too. Like maybe the high density of rush means you don't have room for the board control and the artifact control and all these other things, and so you're left a little bit vulnerable. Um, but
Hmm.
uh, but yeah, I think in broad strokes I'm with you on there for sure.
Yeah, and I don't have a problem with those decks existing either that try to shorten the game, and understanding as a player who is up against a rush deck, am I a good enough early game player to recognize what I have to do in these first 3 turns to prevent them from shortening this game to the point where I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to lose? And so I have no problem with those decks existing. I want there to be counterplay to be able to do something about it in time, whether that is maybe playing some creatures that capture that they can't handle, because like you mentioned, maybe the rush deck doesn't have a lot of creature control, or maybe it's control the weakening them early on into something that they don't want to go to, knowing that it's not going to advance their game plan. So those kind of early game strategies, I think, um, are things that I would want to focus on. Whereas, again, if we think about like the more modern sets with Grim Reminders, there's a lot of times where a Grim Reminders deck, it's just like double boo and Winds of Death, and all of a sudden they have their entire deck, and you have nothing. And there's not a lot of counterplay you can do there. And so there's different types of these short games that I think make a difference too. And yeah, well, I know we don't want to get too much into this, but I will just say succinctly that power creep makes a difference in this conversation as well.
Yeah, and there's no denying that, having gone through a number of competitive games with Grim Reminders and seeing, these games that are ending on turn 5 or turn 6 fairly consistently, that inspired this conversation or this kind of like exercise. Um, but uh, but yeah, I don't know. It's been rewarding to think about. I I definitely feel like there has been this like edging forward, and that's maybe a natural thing to see gone unchecked in a racing game with more and more sets added to the mix. But I yeah would reiterate that I like, and this is a comment that was consistent in the survey that we sent out. Folks would say, I put 10 turns because, or I put 8 turns but, or 7 turns, but I just want there to feel like there's room for play and counterplay and like meaningful kind of like threat and response uh, as opposed to like someone running away. And like a 10 turn game felt like there was room for nice play and counterplay without the feeling like somebody ran away with it. And that's kind of where folks for folks landed. So a big it depends, of course, but yeah, that being at the crux of it, and then I think with the others, I feel comfortable with sort of that like 9 to 11 range as sort of a nice sweet spot to wrap a bow on. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now we did say that this wasn't going to be like time driven. We weren't worried about that at all. But there are practical like limitations in a competitive tournament setting too, right? Like we had a note in the chat. I don't know if this was tongue in cheek or not, but 2 hours is too long. Like maybe I guess depends on your taste. But in like a tournament setting, you're given 45 minutes. 45 minutes? Yeah.
Yeah.
And
45.
not 2 hours? Are you sure? I don't know. And like if you just start thinking about like, well, it takes 1 or 2 minutes, 3 minutes per turn, 2 to 3 minutes per turn per person to like kind of think through a complex turn. Maybe on average too. I'm not sure. That'd be interesting to kind of dig into. But you start to run into some hard limits. Like 20 turn games are maybe a thing that I would personally enjoy, especially if there are tiers involved. But it's not going to be like something that I can reasonably achieve and then still like finish the game in a tournament setting. So there are some limitations there, but I think 10 puts you kind of in like a reasonable spot to be finishing games without worrying about going to time often too, which is nice. Um,
Yeah.
the Holy Grail has always been like a best of three, right? But I don't think 10 puts you kind of in that range. But 1 in 45 certainly feels achievable. Achievable.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, and the time part of it gets kind of mixed up a bit too because there are definitely some decks that take longer to play their turns than others.
absolutely, absolutely.
So it's not a one-to-one correlation of number of turns, number of minutes is always going to match up. But um, you can definitely have a game that's 5 turns that feels like it's too long, and you can have a game that's 20 turns that feels like it went by really quickly.
Yep, yep, totally. And yeah, yeah.
And I just want to clarify the comment from the chat earlier. It was Ketzer that said, "I think if a game of Keyforge goes past 2 hours, it's starting to get a little bit too long." So don't want to twist their words. 2 hours, it's starting to get like, oh, well, maybe this is too long. I'm not so sure. But someone else had mentioned that I forget where it was, somewhere on Discord maybe today, said that they had a game that lasted, 25 or 35 turns or whatever it was. And I guess it was just a lot longer than they had expected. And I kind of was like, hey, just look at that as like free Keyforge. You get to play more
Keyforge.
Keyforge for a single game. Like we all enjoy this game, so who cares if you're playing longer? It's this is what we're doing for fun. We should be enjoying this.
You are getting high value for your game start button presses on
Yeah.
TCO.
Yes. The amount of entertainment for a single game is increased. That
Yeah,
ratio increases when you have a 35 turn game.
yeah. Do you put time limits on your matches on TCO for leagues and such, or do you just kind of let
I
it
generally
fly?
don't. Yeah, I just let it fly. I've had a couple situations where it went too long. Almost always because it is a grind deck versus a grind deck.
Mm.
Um, I tend to play a lot of rush decks. Um, so like those kind of matchups don't happen for me very often. Like I mentioned that 44 turn game I had, I think it was in Kagi. Um, that was a heck of a match. But there was no timer on that one. There probably should have been.
I remember this match. You started it. I went out to dinner, like brought the whole family,
Yeah.
uh, and
Murph
like
went camping for the weekend.
Murph went camping for the weekend, and Murph came back, and you were still playing.
Yeah, it's true. That is true. It was a really crazy match. Yeah. There were a lot of people that came and went during that match. They're like, wait a minute, this is the same match?
This is I okay. Joking aside with Murph, I legitimately went out to dinner, like I don't know, went to a movie, something like all like back to back, and came back and it was still going.
And
uh,
I'm just glad that I was against someone who was enjoying it as much as I was.
I mean, so they say, but so they say,
So they say.
so they say. Was the longest was the first game the longest, or was it a different
No, it was
one?
game 3 because
Okay.
it was a matchup where there was definitely a tipping point, and I bid a pretty high number of chains on the favorite deck,
Hmm.
knowing that it had good efficiency with like an auto encoder. It had some things like effervescent principle to extend the game. And I knew after the first two games that there was a tipping point where the deck couldn't lose basically. And it was still a very technical execution that had to happen after that tipping point. But I knew as long as I did it correctly, I would have it, and that's pretty much what happened. It just happened to take 45 turns, 44 turns.
Yeah. Could you, man, what an emotional beating if you game one goes to like 45 turns and you're like, best of three, baby, let's go.
I have to check. I think I did save those game logs because they were all
Oh,
three pretty remarkable. But I think one and two were like 20 to 30 turns.
wow, incredible. So you were hitting like 40, like 40 plus, no, 60, 80 plus, 80, no, what was it, 20? Last one was like 40 turns and the others were 20, so you're like at 80 plus turns of key
Oh
forge
yeah,
for this
over the
match.
course of the match, it was easily over 80. Yeah,
Oofa doofa, oofa doofa. That's something. That's
good
beautiful.
time.
That's
Very
beautiful.
good time.
Yeah, and chat saying that like I wonder about this too, is like mental stamina thing you consider conserving. Like I brought T Zyger, the Lighthouse Dock, a deck that I love and enjoy. Absolutely grind deck. Has grueling turns start to finish. And I brought that deck to Vault Tour Philadelphia. Had two games that went to time. Actually, one finished just as time was being called. The other went to time, um, and it was a very different experience playing that in a competitive setting online and versus in real life. And so I kind of kicking myself afterwards for not having more competitive games, IRL with that deck under my belt before bringing it. But be that as it may, do you definitely feel, or I definitely felt the kind of mental fatigue in the latter rounds with that.
Yeah,
But
that's a really good point too. Is when you're playing in those longer premier level events, you want to bring something that you are comfortable playing for 4, 5, 6 hours straight. And if it's a very mentally taxing deck, that's going to be harder on you. And if it's something that's going to consistently go to time, that's also very hard. I mean, I think they do a pretty good job at Vault Tours giving lunch breaks,
mm-hmm,
um, which is nice. But there's still a lot to be said about like finishing your game in 20, 25 minutes and having a break between rounds just to stretch your legs, walk around a little bit. It makes a big difference for sure. And so I actually do tend to gravitate towards the rush decks, even if I still like very strategically complex ones.
mm-hmm.
But I at those kind of events, I definitely value the time between rounds. It's definitely a real advantage.
Yeah, I can agree with that. When I'm playing a faster deck, like I played uh, a much faster, very rushy deck at the last Vault Tour we were at, and on that day, it was kind of like, oh, lunch break, but we've got so much time, because my games were ending quickly.
Mm,
But playing Zyger, you feel like you're running the gauntlet. You finish one game, and like everybody was like, "Is this guy done yet?" You're like, "All right, next game. Where's the table?" Like, "All right, let's go," you know.
yeah,
So it's a very different experience on the day for sure.
yeah,
Yeah. But that's interesting. So there are, I mean, yeah, there are kind of like practical limitations. These I think are going to influence how the designers have to, or kind of like forced into thinking about ideal game lengths that they're designing for. I think hopefully 10 is on the inside of that, but there are absolutely going to be, I've played games with Zyger that I feel like you get to the 10th turn and you're like, oh mama, this is like, there's been a lot that's happened already. And like, that's okay. It's just, as you're looking at lots of decks over lots of games, I think 10 is a kind of a reasonable sweet spot in a competitive setting. Um, well, cool. I think maybe we've hit that pretty hard. Let's talk a little bit about what do we kind of do with that info? So does it help us much to think to like have this in mind, like, oh, 10's the ideal game. I should probably feel bad about myself if it's turn 11 now. Like, no, but I think being mindful or knowing how your deck tends to pace itself is very useful and can be super helpful for you in planning, especially as you're nearing the end game, or kind of working through the middle game, right? Like, oh gosh, do I need to hold? It's turn 5 or whatever. I'm halfway through my deck. Maybe you don't know the exact term number, but like, do I need to hold this card that's potentially an answer, or can I like hope to get it on the redraw? That sort of a thing. And so
Hmm.
just being aware of where you are in your deck and how the game is progressing pacing wise um, is very useful information. It doesn't mean you need to like worry about the turn number per se, but like being aware of how you're moving through your deck and how the cards are flowing, I think is definitely a thing to be aware of. Yeah.
Yeah, and you mentioned like maybe there's a card that you hope to get on a redraw, but like if you're on turn 5 and you recognize that your deck usually ends games by turn 9 or loses by turn 9, your
Mm-hmm.
opponent's making pretty good pace, and you think I'll just discard this and hope to redraw it, you may not even be able to get to the shuffle. And so recognizing where you are in the game, how many turns are left, and how many turns it's taken you, like that can definitely be, I think, valuable strategic information to inform you during a game, and maybe use this kind of information to become a better player, to understand like, yeah, I can't bank on redrawing this because I can't even bank on shuffling. So
Yep.
that might be an indicator that this is a card I need to hold.
Yep. Knowing whether or not you're going to shuffle, and maybe even like recognizing when you're up against a rush deck and you'd normally get a reshuffle, but you're not going to in this game. Uh, yeah, this happens. I keep bringing Zyger up, but um, the misplays that I most often make with that deck are and what I name with Eaton's Jar, right?
Mm.
And so uh, I make a decision early on if I draw the card early and kind of want to get it out there. Is this game going to go super long and I need to kind of position myself with Jar for a winning endgame, or am I using this more for tempo and trying to like win earlier and sacrifice some of that end game edge, right? And most of the time when I lose with that deck, I look back in the game and I say, yeah, I misevaluated where we were going and how the game was pacing. I really needed this Jar to be a tempo boost early on so that I could close the game out. Or like, yeah, I thought I was going to close the game out, but I didn't get there, and I would have had an opportunity to like turn the corner in the end game if I had jarred their end game piece. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah,
And you mentioned tempo a few times. I'm trying to think. We haven't done an episode on tempo yet, have we?
I'll put it on the list. Put it
I
on
think
the
it is on the
list.
list. I
It's on the
think it might be
list.
coming. I think it is. But this is definitely relevant to that too, like tempo and number of turns in a game and how many you expect to be left, that kind of thing. And you make these decisions based on that. And I think understanding the length of game, maybe this is a good precursor to that discussion on tempo, where we're thinking about like how do you have this frame of reference for a game. Sure, it's turns, but do we really think about turns that much? Like I never actually thought that much to track how many turns are in a game for some of my decks, or how many turns it takes me to flip my deck, things like that. But I think starting to think in that context might give you a better frame of reference for the kind of tempo that you should be thinking about, to see where you're at in a game, if you're falling behind or if you're well ahead.
Totally. And I mean, before kind of digging into this topic, it wasn't a thing that I had paid too much heed to, which is incredible, right? Like we're playing, it's billed as a racing game, right? How quickly can you forge three keys, and quickly is measured in turns, right? If I can do it in fewer turns than you can, I win. But we've just because we're kind of racing side by side, we never or I never, very infrequently look back at exactly how many turns it was. It's just kind of like, yeah, did I see you ahead of me or behind me when the game
Mm-hmm.
ended? But having an understanding for how those turns typically play out, or how many turns typically get played, is good information. And I think really became uh, really became kind of obviously apparent. I don't know, redundantly obviously apparent in the WoW era when that like 7 turn mark just became such a stark divide,
Mm-hmm.
at least to the decks that I was testing and trying, and now it feels more like 5 or 6.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, I guess let's start the Mario Kart references early in the season. But you talked about like you don't count the turns because all you're worried about is, am I winning or losing, right? Think about like if you're in a race, any kind of race, but let's say a Mario Kart race. You may not care about like your time, right? Like I finished this course in 3 minutes 5 seconds. Okay, like you don't care about that. You only care if you're winning or losing that race, and you win the race, and you're like, cool, the race is over. It doesn't matter how fast it was. But if you understand how much time it takes you to get through a certain course, then you're going to be able to better pace yourself against someone else who goes ahead early. And you're like, man, they're like 10 seconds ahead of me this lap. I might need to take some shortcuts to get to where I need to be to win this race and that positioning. And if you think about like that, the time aspect of a race, it's very akin to the turn aspect in Keyforge, where you're thinking like, I'm falling behind here, and so in order to catch up, I need these shortcuts. Otherwise, I'm like 2 turns behind them right now, and you have to make some decisions based on that. So it's kind of the same. Like you wouldn't really, you know, you wouldn't ignore times in a race. Why would you ignore turns in a game of Keyforge?
And I'm so glad that you presented that kind of in reference to how you react to the other player, because I think there is a trap in thinking about turns in an absolute sense to kind of getting yourself into this kind of solitaire like mindset. But if you're using that information to gauge your pacing against your opponent, I think that's a great way to kind of interact with the game. Yeah, totally. Well, the chat is teeing us up for that tempo episode you hinted at, but we won't go there quite yet. Excited that folks are interested, I guess, though. I don't know if I had too many other notes to hit on this one. Quick draw. Did you have anything you wanted to touch on?
I don't think so, but the tempo one will be good. Maybe a month, 6 weeks out for
Yeah,
that one. Gonna let it brew a little bit. Hopefully, this kind of gives you something to think about before that episode does come out. So
right, right on,
I
right on,
think I
right
hit
on.
everything here, though. Just a shout out to Behawk. Behawk gave us some interesting notes before the show today as well. Kind of thinking about this, and just to kind of sort of out of left field, I guess, compared to the rest of the conversation we already had. But talking about the way Grim Reminder's efficiency works and being able to see only the cards you want to see and not really like seeing your entire deck is a really interesting thing because we're talking about this in the frame of reference of like I've seen my entire deck and I've seen every card and I've been able to use them, but Grim Reminders and the recursion that it brings with it kind of flips it on its head a bit because you're just like, I'm just going to empty my discard pile and then choose what I want to see. And you could do that a lot faster and you like see every card, but you don't have to actually wade through the bad ones and play around the bad ones in those. You can just kind of pick and choose a lot of times which ones you want to bring back. And so it really changes the conversation in a not always good way. So that was, yeah, shout out to Behawk for kind of uh, you know, getting us to think about things a little bit differently
Mm-hmm.
right before we went on the record.
Oh, that Beehawk, a gentleman and a scholar. Indeed. Indeed. Cool. Well, it wouldn't be a new season of Bottom of the Beaker without some brand new sponsors, folks. And this episode of Bottom of the Beaker was brought to you by Exchange Program, the hassle free service that handles your returns with ease. Whether you've changed your mind or simply found something better, for a small monthly fee, Exchange Program sends couriers right to your door to pick up unwanted items and return them to their respective stores. No more standing in long lines or dealing with frustrating return policies. With Exchange Program, you can focus on what really matters while we take care of the rest. Simplify your life and let Exchange Program navigate the retail trading frenzy because your time is too valuable to waste. Indeed. Quick draw, you ever have any things you'd like to take back? I don't know.
I love the exchange program service that they offer, and I also love to put a bunch of amber on the thing before I send it back to the store. That's my favorite move with it.
Yes, this I would like to belong to the thing I'm going to load up with Amber of the Month Club and you and ship it off with the next box.
Love it.
Yeah, yeah, cool. Well, folks, I want to let you all know that yeah, it's back, baby, and Bottom of the Beaker is recorded once again Wednesday evenings right here at 9:30 Eastern Time at twitch.tv/sloppylabwork. You can find recordings of our other shows and past streams over at youtube.com. We are at Sloppy Labwork over there. And for the very best content, 34? No, 57 times distilled and scraped from the bottom of the beaker. You can search for that very phrase in your podcatcher of choice. And we'll be there, regardless of how many turns the game takes with you to play some Keyforge. Thanks so much, Quick Draw, as always. And do you have any words for the folks getting off the final audio stop?
Yeah, thanks for tuning in live. We had a lot of viewers live tonight. Thank you guys very much. Thanks everyone listening on the podcast. Welcome to season 3, and don't forget, most importantly, to stay sloppy.
Stay sloppy indeed. Indeed. So do we? Oh, this was a good one. We maybe could have hit. Do we think quantity of turns is a good metric for measuring game length? So we've got turns and time as kind of obvious ones. Uh, I guess you could also, measure games in terms of like raw amber, like gained and lost over the course of the game, and you could probably say some interesting things about. Oh gosh, this game there was 100 amber gained and like 92 lost. Like what's going on there, sort of a thing. I think it's a natural one. I think it's a natural one to use, but I think most healthy when it's relative to your opponent. And there's kind of like back and forth ability for you to impact how many turns your opponent is taking. So I don't love it as a metric if it's like how quickly can I solitaire with this deck, but I like it as a this is what I'm going to use to like pace myself against typical opponents. Yeah.
I don't think this is what Cloggin's asking here, but it also makes me wonder, what if instead of it was not a race to 3 keys, but instead a race to as many keys as you could forge in 10 turns.
Race to as many keys as you could forge in 10 turns. Interesting.
Would definitely change the decks that you would choose, but I wonder how that would affect things. I'd like to play that sometime.
That would be interesting to interesting to try out. You could think of some interesting kind of like bidding derivatives based on that. Um, yeah,
Hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Could be fun.
Well, we're gonna play a game now, right?
Sure are.
It's gonna
Sure.
be Psy versus Southgott, which is my double Curia Equalize Spirits Way double Effervescent Principle deck, right? That's what we're gonna play.
Oh man, I know you have curious shenanigans in there, but I have to say, playing against Curia with cleric tokens would be some hilarity.
Let's throw in a Whirlpool while we're at it.
Why not? Why not?
I would really love a set in the future that had Whirlpool and Curia. Can we make that happen, Ghost Galaxy?
That sounds like a Vault Master Quincy edition. I
Let's
don't
do it.
know.
Yeah. If I ever designed a Vaultmaster set, that's guaranteed. First 2 cards are in there as Whirlpool and then Curiosaurus.
That could be a fun set. And I mean, yeah, dinos play into Whirlpool well.
Yeah.
Could be fun. Yeah, we have a fun. I have a fun. I have a really interesting play by post game going with Not Tonight right now that you're seeing on our team server. Quick Draw.
Yeah, it's a fun one.
Whirlpool Whirlpool Vaultmaster deck, and we both have trawlers and like bubbles and things to shift battle lines and stuff, and it's gonna be interesting.
Speaking of, I would really love to play a game with one of my Vaultmaster Whirlpool decks that I just got. What do you say about that?
One more time. Oh,
I,
Vaultmaster
would- I
deck you
would
guys got?
really, I would really love to play a game with one of my Vaultmaster decks that I just got that has Whirlpool in it.
All right, let's
Yeah.
do it.
You don't
I
need to play one with Whirlpool. You can, but I'm going to play a Vaultmaster 24.
All right. Let me
And
see.
if you've got a Vaultmaster 24, I think we've both enjoyed Vaultmaster games quite a bit.
I am enjoying VM24. I actually just opened a new VM24 deck that's part of a sealed pool, so I can't load it up here. Uh,
Pretty sure you have a nice stash.
I have a nice stash. I gave a bunch away. I gave a bunch away.
Do you want to play sealed? I have a Vaultmaster sealed in my closet. I could do that. It's a stamp as well. I think it's a Roseville stamp.
Ooh. Trying to see if I've got one up there. I have at least one more sealed somewhere. I could do it. I
We,
think.
we don't have to do it tonight. We could do it next week.
All right, next week. Next week we'll
All right.
do VM sealed.
Let's do a VM Archon tonight.
All right. All right. Sounds
Anyone
good.
anyone that you like. I have.
VM24. I'm gonna raw this one unless you have some peppers to guide me. Um,
I don't because I've never played it, so I
okay.
don't. I don't. I can't tell you how many peppers. I'm not going to try to tell you
Okay.
a Saz if you want.
Nah.
Um, I got this one from Mark H. It has a Las Vegas stamp on it.
Ooh, sweet.
Um, and I am officially collecting Whirlpool decks of every geotag. Um, I currently have three. I have a San Antonio, I have a Las Vegas, and I have a Vietnam one on the way.
Hmm.
I also have a very strong lead on a Hamburg. So anyone out there listening, I'm looking for Roseville, Rochester, and Baltimore Whirlpool decks.
Oh, wait.
So
You're looking for wait one more time. You're looking for what?
Roseville,
Okay.
Rochester, or Baltimore geotag Whirlpool decks.
Okay. The Wait a minute. Quick draw. Are you messing with me right now?
No, no, I didn't want to say anything. I know you have one.
I feel like you're putting me on the spot here now. I gotta give
I
you.
didn't mean you didn't need to out yourself. You outed yourself right there. There are others in existence. Um,
Oh, nice.
oh, don't worry. When you opened that and you showed it, I that's the first thing I noticed.
Okay. Well, I was checking my play by post drawer because the Vaultmaster deck that I'm playing is a Whirlpool deck, and I couldn't remember if it was geotagged. It is a
Uh,
Rochester.
it is.
It
It
is a
is.
Rochester Whirlpool deck. That's kind of a cool one. Kind of a cool
It's a
one.
really cool one. It's a really cool one.
Um,
Your play-by-post game has been very fun to watch.
yeah. So not only we'll see. Hopefully the shenanigans happen before Not Tonight catches on to this episode. Watches this episode. I don't
You
know.
better play faster.
Yeah,
You've only gone through like one turn in 3 days.
yeah, and I'm traveling this weekend, so unlikely. But yeah, double bubbles with Trawler and Whirlpool.
I
And
love it.
like on the shadow side too, this is so cool. I mean, who doesn't like skeleton key, right? Always fun, but you got a mole too. That's so fun. Mole with
Mole and
Trawler on
yeah,
oh yeah, so fun.
yeah.
Anyway, we
There's
digress.
so many good synergies in Vaultmaster with the Whirlpool. Like the mole is a good one. Uh, Ghost Hawk actually, like that's kind of what I'm excited to play with here is Ghost Hawk and Whirlpool. Fangtooth Cavern is one that also existed in DT, but
Yep.
in DT, I there's very few good synergies between Unfathomable and Untamed. I feel this set I think is a bit better. So um, yeah, it's a blast. I love the VM24 set. Um, I got a game up for you in beginner. Password you can probably guess.
Okay. Well, I feel like I'm honor bound, but I had inklings of sending it your way anyway already. So we'll see.
Well,
All right, let me see. So I went to the random access archives
nice. I like it.
and rolled naturally my highest SAS deck.
Naturally.
Naturally.
I find that the SAS in the VM games, like closed VM games, doesn't seem to matter. We played a VM tournament at my local. We all had a bunch of saved ones. We did a sealed VM at my local about a month ago. I ended up, I think, with the lowest SAS deck there and went 3-0. So,
Nice.
yeah.
All right, cool. So
All
you're playing
right.
Natural K of the Fractional Vault. Fun. Ooh.
Nardual. Nardual.
Nargel. Excuse me. Excuse me.
Yes. And you've got some nice capture. You've got some ostentatious mount. Obeyed the Grim. Lightbringer Outpost. Very nice. Good.
Mm-hmm.
Making me think twice about playing my Whirlpool. We'll see. Quartermaster Body. Uh, Double Piece of Cord, which is nice. Interesting. Very cool. This will be a fun one.
And your deck is like where's the bad penny, man? Where's the bad penny?
I know. I have. So right now we talked about in my collection. Whirlpool is the second, I think, second most common card in my collection,
Yeah.
and it is right behind the Seeker Needle. And this deck's got two Seeker Needles, but like you said, there is no bad penny.
Nice. Nice. All right. Well, interesting. I'm gonna ship this one. Actually, we're gonna remind myself of what's in here. I haven't played this one since Rochester. When we played the the adaptive event at VT Rochester. I opened this up to play with.
Oh,
Yeah, so this was the
I
one
didn't play against you in that one. I played against you a few
Mhm.
other times with VM, but not this one. Well, this is not a great hand, but I'm gonna keep it.
Yeah, not excellent, but we'll roll with it. I think.
Yeah,
Just seeing what you got over here to worry about.
nothing,
Mm-hmm.
nothing to worry about over here.
Not a whole lot of nothing. All right, Leah. Let's keep this marginal 2-2-2 and see what
Mm,
happens.
yeah, let's. Do you got any one power creatures over there? I don't think so. No, let's get this party started early, right?
Well, that changes things.
That's like the only reason I kept this hand. It's otherwise quite bad.
Huh. I should have counted your pips. I should have counted your pips.
This isn't even the deck I meant to play. I have so many Whirlpool decks. I'm getting them mixed up now. This is not my Las Vegas deck. This is a different deck. Um, but I haven't played this deck yet, so I
Okay.
was like, wait a minute, this doesn't seem like what I thought I was bringing. But
Okay, so you have not a ton of pips in there, quick draw.
no, that is correct.
Bren's an interesting one too. I guess you could
It is.
mm-hmm. 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 Very interesting. Very interesting. You know what? I'm gonna do the same thing anyway. I am gonna play this Eldest Bear. Why not? That sounds
Cool.
fun. That sounds
Very
fun.
good. Very good.
Hmm.
Um, let's just slow you down a little bit. Turn that bear.
Awesome. I dig it.
And it's cool that we have no overlapping houses here. So
So you say. You say it's cool. Hmm. I mean, that's kind of fun. It's got the. You know what? We're just gonna remove some stuff here. Make us a nice beefy Avinda. There you go.
very cool.
Hmm.
Let's go dis. Sia Cermeros.
Okay. Nice. Nice. Gonna
And
do some buzzling.
do a little bit of buzzling.
That's some buzzling. All right, we're putting some stuff on the board. Interesting. Buzzle can. Mm-hmm. 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 All right, Untamed. I think. Let's get a reap here
There you go.
and play the eldest bear over there.
All right. Let's go shadows here.
Yeah, legit.
And let's see how that Bren goes.
Oh, mama.
Start chipping away.
Interesting. Interesting.
Got that centered eldest bear. Just fight right into that Brand.
It's a thing we could do. It's a thing we could do. Could do some tradesies too. Turn off the Vinda Seeker Needle combo. Feels like a reasonable thing to do. Ugh. I also really like the idea. Oh, how much do we want to risk it? You got Poison Wave possibly coming. Played Hit and Run already. All right, we're going to be a little greedy. Quick draw. Be a little greedy. Go in Sanctum here. Gonna play the free markets for a big old 5 amber.
That's
Gotta,
a big one.
gotta heal that Bren so you can't two-shot it. And we're gonna toss down the old Abeid
Awesome.
and Light Post.
I like it.
Yeah.
It's good burst. Steal 3. Yeah, I was hoping to actually. I was hoping to take this next turn before you could get the outpost out, but I
Mm.
didn't quite get it. So we're gonna go Unfathomable here, and we're gonna Abyssal Sight. Take care of that Brend.
Ooh, nice.
And let's see, you are not haunted.
Nope.
Um, that Ishi looks pretty good right now. Creatures to the left of Panpaka, so that could give you Skirmish. That's it wouldn't be a bad turn for you if you did that, but hmm. Yeah, all right. Let's this is going to be an odd choice, but I'm going to actually get rid of your Panpaka.
Interesting. And Covetous Hema comes down. Immersioneer. Ooh, spicy.
Somehow took you off key there.
You sure did. Hmm. I think I want to burn this ostentatious mount now. Seems okay. Then the Hema's gonna get all. Interesting. Very interesting. All elusive. That's okay. I almost clicked the wrong house because I have 6 to choose from. like I
Ah,
want to.
that's the best.
Yeah, I want to
That,
go
that,
Sanctum, but all right, we'll slide you over there. Um, and we'll put you on the bottom to catch her some more. Okay. Ostentatious indeed.
all right. We're going to go Unfathomable here. Going to play this nice Maverick Unfathomable
Ooh,
Abad the Grim. Love
cool,
it.
cool.
Um, while your opponent is haunted. I think play the Tangy Mangy behind the taunt.
Mm-hmm.
Another Immersioneer. And gonna reap. And then I think I'm gonna mill the top 3 of yours. And
Do
it's gonna
it.
get rid of 3 sanctums, including a capture. So that's pretty good for me, I'd say. And
Solid.
pass over that all bad.
It's all bad. Okay. Just to the left, gain skirmish, huh? Doubling down. I think so.
This is quite a game of hot potato we've got going on here.
Yeah, and we both decided to play creatures. Very
Yeah.
interesting. One of us was probably wrong.
Well, I think at least one of us was wrong.
Yeah. Uh, that is a knight. Interesting. Interesting. All right, we're going untamed. Playing this Mermook over here. Gonna shoot that duder. And this Mariana came back really wrong.
That's pretty good though.
That's cool. Collect on the eldest bear. And send you that Mariana. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, Tanky. Ah, man. I completely forgot about the Tanky Manky. Terrible. Terrible.
Yeah, that Tangy's pretty good right now.
Pretty
What
good.
did you fight? You just fought off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could have left the
Obed.
the Abad and fought into the Mangi instead.
You could have, yeah.
May have been. If I was a better player, I may
If
have done that.
only.
Hmm.
Uh,
Interesting.
don't love this, but I think you're gonna have to go Star Alliance here. And you've got a stealth mode somewhere, but I know you have 4 Star Alliance in hand, and none of them have out-of-hand creature control. You do have a taunt though, but I think I'm good to go Dis here and try to move some cards. Play the Lash, Poltergeist, your Lightbringer Outpost,
Seems good.
and probably gonna put back the Ghost Talk is pretty good for you. Um, let's do the Vinda instead. Capture 3 on the Ghost Hawk.
Cool.
And then a Mind Fire. Get rid of the taunt. I like that. That worked out for me.
Nice. I'll forge for a nice 10. Cool 10 amber for the red key. Oofa doofa. Hmm. Interesting. What do you...
Do
All
you have
right.
a doorstep over there? No, you don't have a doorstep. That's good.
No doorstep.
That would be trouble.
All right. Yeah, let's go Star Alliance. Turns. How many keys can you forge in 10 turns? Can you forge keys in 10 turns? I don't know. Oh, interesting. Right. Yeah, I don't hate either of those. Hmm. I think we gotta let that one go though. Sag. 2, 2. Yeah. Okay.
Garcia. Okay.
Garcia. I'm gonna play the peace accord.
Interesting. I was wondering if you would.
Captures 2, and I'm gonna send you a Kirby here. I'm a nice guy, and I'll leave that
Leave that body, huh?
Leave that body for you to smash. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, funky. Very interesting. Hot potato indeed. Hot
I
potato
think I'm just
indeed.
gonna power through that piece of cord. That's my gut.
Seems legit. Seems legit.
I think that seems like the right thing to do. Otherwise, I could get too far behind in this hot potato.
What's one more turn? You know? I mean, what's one more turn? Yeah, there was an interesting topic suggestion about using like tilt and mind games. I don't know. What's one more turn, my guy, you know?
Yeah.
I thought you liked whirlpool shenanigans, you know?
I love it. So let's start with a brain drain so I can figure out if this is what I really want to do.
Oh, boo.
Uh, Lost in the Wild. Smith would be good if I don't fight you. It's an untamed Smith. Pretty good chance you're going untamed here.
No promises. No
No
promises.
promises, indeed. Let's go. Let's put the stealth mode back.
Okay.
And pretty sure, yeah, I'm just going to power through this.
9 amber for the taking, 4 for the losing. Doesn't seem too bad. You may have disconnected also.
Ah, cool. Okay. That's good to know.
So turn 8 here, quick draw. You know, trying to be good doobies about our topics and all. Um, yeah, feels decent on the pacing, I would say, and firmly in the mid game. Yeah.
I am still in the early game, but I'm going to try to fix that here.
Oh snap. Okay, we are powering through. Very nice. Hmm. I think, yeah, good question. The tools, I think a lot of the tools that I've expected to see have come through. When the poltergeist would come was a big question. How the Bren would play out, um, and then I have kind of one last biggish play, um, but it doesn't look like it's going to be super impactful. Um, hmm, I can. Interesting. This is the like Vincini deep dive now. Like, all right, but you brain drained me first. So what's the turn quick draw wanted me to take here? You know.
Exactly.
Hmm. You can fight through a. You can fight through a ward. I think I check and ship you the body amber. Probably pitch the medic now. Let's start discarding cards. Okay. So still haunted. Body's gonna reap. Capture 2 more.
Mm-hmm.
Play this booster. Change my mind. I'm playing the Medic Ingram, and we're gonna ward this Ronnie wrist clocks. Okay, cool. That's
All right,
a
I got a
turn.
key.
That's a
Got a
turn.
key.
Key for you.
Interesting choice to word the Ronnie.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Unsure why you thought that was the right move.
Probably wasn't, you know.
It
Just
definitely wasn't. You get me some more options here.
nice. I like it. I like it.
Hmm. Yeah, we're just gonna mark you into shadows now.
Oh, nice. Yeah,
It's gonna mark you into unfathomable, but you could fight off the body then.
it was a debate whether the mark was coming or not, but sometimes you get bit. What are you gonna do?
Yeah, we'll play it over there.
Cool, cool, cool. Well, I guess I'll go shadows.
You went from like 6 options to one.
I know, so sad. Want that not to go away. Want this one to go away. Let's see what's on top here. That thing, huh? That thing can go to the bottom. I will fight and trade with the Kirby. Okay. Give you a thing.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Very interesting decision to just fight there.
Skeleton key. Nice. Okay. Bow steals. Cool. Oh, bow. Gross. Dang. Hmm. Okay, we'll go untamed.
Got that lost in the wild now. Healing the bow.
Yeah. Sending the bow back. I didn't want to send the Ronnie back.
I see.
Yeah. So that's going to do those things. Can smith here too. I think I let the Mookling go. And now we take a look. That one. Let's leave that on top. Okay.
All right.
Got
How much
another
capture you got left?
expensive key for me, perhaps.
Got a Mariana with some knights. You've got the body coming back. Definitely got some more capture coming my way.
Mm-hmm.
Let's do it anyway.
Nice.
Gonna lash you, and I'm actually gonna play creatures.
Holy moly. Tesmol. Oofa doofa. Oofa doofa. Yeah, that's brutal. Tesmol's good. Tesmol's good.
Tesmol could be very good here.
Hmm. Yeah, Tesmol. Okay. Let's go Sanctum. We'll get rid of A Duder. Play this Ardent Hero. Capture some there. Take a look. I think that's okay. And we'll ship it.
Hmm.
Yeah.
8 cards left. Now you've got body in there. Hmm.
9 seconds. TCO's 18 turns is what for tonight's survey? TCO is 9. 9. Yeah, yeah. If the game ends on turn 9. Oh no, sorry, on no, wait a minute. I'm confusing myself. 18 turns was it would be 18 on the survey. Yeah. Counting full turns where each player gets a turn. Ooh, more dis. Yeah, 36 turns total. 36 sides, 18 innings, fights, and prevents me from playing. Okay, interesting. You took 8. Yeah. Yeah. We took 18 turns. Huh, interesting. Well, I think I'm going to do something kind of funky here. Why not? We're going to go dis. We're just going to fight off this immersion here. Maybe a Reapwood is better. But yeah, maybe I'll take that Tesmol and we'll trade some turns here. Buzzle comes down. Very cool. Eats up the Tesmol? Or just gives me a
No,
Buzzle?
come on. I would never do that to you.
Oofa doofa. I mean, I just want to see where this goes now. All right. Are you slow rolling mold? I should be looking at your Archon card, but are you slow rolling more disc creatures? That would just be brutal. Yerk, you've played a couple Yerks, you played a couple Buzzles, Gabos we saw, Bonesaw we saw. I mean, I can count, I guess. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 disc creatures, 2 Yerks, 2 Buzzles, Gabos, 7 creatures. Okay. Does it give me the thing? It does, but I gotta give it back, though I can't call I can't make more creatures now. Sag.
uh,
Yeah,
Tesmo in this set is so crazy.
that's funky. Um okay. Okay. Reap and no dis for you.
Nice.
Okay.
Love
Okay.
it. Love it.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
I mean, I maybe been better off fighting Tesmol into Bonesaw there. It just felt like a not super fun thing to do. I don't know. Yeah. Actually, maybe fighting into the Mariana would have been better. Leave the Bonesaw to gum up the would have been better, and then leaving Bonesaw to gum up your battle line. Hmm. uh, I mean, so this is really funny. All right, we'll see. All right, stealth mode, peace accord. Um,
Nice.
Body comes down to capture,
Mm-hmm.
and medic comes down to ward herself. And we'll draw those two cards regardless. Okay.
Okay. Definitely gonna go shadows here,
Mm-hmm.
despite the no actions. Let's see if I do this right.
Yeah, I got at least the bow coming back. Maybe I should have given you the medic, warded the body, and try and go again. But you've got. I mean, you could have double fought it, I guess. There's bow. Cool.
Got an urchin for you as well.
Nice. Nice. Bo was, yeah, definitely coming back. Hmm. 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 Welp. Welp. We've got very few options here, but we'll see what we can find. Okay. Another peace accord, huh? Oh, right. I won't be able to actually play the thing that I draw with this Forging an Alliance pip before getting to play it, so it will not
Mm.
matter. For the extra amber, I can ditch that one. But we can show that Sensor Chief Garcia was the next card. Nah. Okay. And for kicks here, we'll award that urchin. Get some fights in. All right. Good game.
GG, man. Good game.
Well played. Oofa
I was kind of
doofa.
hoping you took me off check there. Actually, I had some nice plays coming up.
Still had
Um,
all D's.
uh, um, I had a Abyssal Sight in hand.
Oof.
Um, I had an Adult Swim, so warding the urchin actually prevents the urchin from going back on top. Um, so what I was gonna do is actually Adult Swim to put back the bow and the urchin, and then play the Abyssal Sight, get rid of something. Um, and then since you didn't get the check, I would give myself a turn to call Shadows next turn. And in my hand, I also have the Brend, so I could go with Brend. Got the double Seeker Needle, and if the Vinda survived a turn there, then I could kill the Brend on play as well. So
Yeah.
I had some legs left still.
Yeah, I think I don't know if I have much counterplay if I don't have enough of a lead. by the time you deal with Lightbringer Outpost when Whirlpool's online. Um, all right, confusion in the chat. No, this was I don't know if this is folks joking. This would have been 17 turns per the survey.
17 turn game. Yeah.
17
So we
turn
did not
game.
hit the point where we said was too many.
Yeah, yeah.
Definitely felt like we had uh, a lot of interplay in this game.
Yeah. I thought so. Yeah, so this was your 17th turn. I just finished my 16th turn. Quicktile had already finished his 16th turn. So TCO showing innings here, not sides, if that metaphor means things to you. This is the 17th inning. This is the 34th side or whatever. Yeah. 33rd side. Yeah, top of the 17th, as it were. Yeah.
Now
Yeah, yeah.
the survey did not have it. The survey was just number of turns. It didn't mean like turns played by both players combined.
Let's see. Let's see. Was this just like terribly worded? It may have been. Let's see.
Probably that was the whole point, right?
That was, I mean, part of the point, just to
How
confuse
long
people.
should a typical game of Keyforge last? And I think everybody understood it because everyone answered about 10.
Okay, so let's see. If the player who went first in the game wins on their fourth turn, i.e., forges their third key at the start of turn 4, player 2 only got 3 turns, but we'll say the game lasted 4 turns. Yeah?
Yeah, so we
Makes
had it
sense?
right.
So buried under a wall of text, clear as mud, but
Yeah, of course.
at least internally consistent. Yeah, TCO labels the big label here. Each player gets a 17th turn or a 16th turn or what have you. So we've finished. We finished 32 complete sides. Yeah. Anyway. Anyway. Yeah, TCO label matches up. So longer
Whirlpool
than
games are great, right? Like Whirlpool games, they're just a blast.
we need a different number for the Whirlpool games versus non-Whirlpool games, right? Because I feel like Whirlpool games, it's like at the limit as X approaches infinity, you're still happy. I don't know, yeah. Big smiley face. It's not before the turn starts though. Is that right? Oh, funny side note. At one point in my life, probably the first time I ever went to Archon Arcana, looked up the cadet token, which I guess can't possibly uh, been the first time. But now Google is always like, oh, or Chrome is always like, you want to look at the cadet again, right? Whenever I start typing Archon Arcana, so
Nice.
timing chart. Let's look at timing chart. Phases of a
Uh,
turn.
is, is Floxamal still here? Floxamal can tell us everything we need to know about the timing chart.
All right, start of turn affects resolve. Then you forge a key. All right, chat. Yeah. Turn starts.
Oh, what
Mm.
was the question? I could have answered that because a sketchy knifed him.
Oh, the question was whether it's kind of shady to say like you're in your xth turn when you forge the key at the start of the turn. If you forge at the start of turn 4, I would definitely say you're in that turn.
Yeah, you're definitely in that turn.
Because you get to do like, yeah, what is it? Tide warp, mecha buoy stuff before you
Tide Warp,
forge, all
Mecha
that
Buoy.
stuff. Yeah.
If you're lucky and you have a Tide Warp and an Operative Espion, you can use a creature.
Yeah.
If you have a Universal Translator on that creature, you can use another creature.
Yeah.
All
Though
kinds of good stuff that can happen.
there was a time though. There was a time when like this was very muddled, right? And I'm gonna fumble the exact way that it worked, but like the start of turn things were like wrapped up with forge a key step in such a way that if you like miasma'd somebody so they skipped their forge a key step, then you also skipped things like tide warp. It was before tide warp was printed, but there were other like start of turn things,
Yeah,
which I'm
I
blanking on.
think
Yeah.
I think you're right. I think that was the rule, and they changed that. I think it was probably during Coda they changed it. Honestly,
It may have been later. It was a thing for a while. I can't remember what the big like interaction was. Um, but yeah, And there's other funky stuff you can do, like if you can pop a strange gizmo, right, with when you've got like a jar goggle and play swindle under jar goggle. You haven't taken the action, so you can play it. It's omega, which is fine. It doesn't end the turn, just ends the step. You just proceed on, and you can like keep doing other stuff.
Would
It's
you?
funky. Yeah,
Okay, I see. Yeah. Um, I have heard about that with like using an omega during the forge a key step.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
interesting. Yeah,
But fun game. Did not
that was a
feel
fun one.
like a 17 turn game. I'm sure. At least the chat for the chat's benefit, we put on a brave face and smiled through the shenanigans. No, I'm
I
just
think
kidding.
it
Enjoyed.
felt pretty long, honestly.
It felt long.
Yeah,
You thought it felt long. Interesting.
I enjoyed it, but it felt longer than what I would consider an ideal game of Keyforge.
Okay. I think I'd agree with that. I think I'd agree with that. I have to admit, when we paused at one point, and I was like, okay, it's turn 8. Like I feel like I'm in the mid game, and you were like, I feel like I'm still in the early game. I was like, whoa, oh, really?
Probably wasn't still in the early game at that point, but I was way behind, and I was making a decision right there to fight and get rid of 4 of my own amber before I even had a key still.
Hmm.
So like it felt like it was I was still a long way away. I think
I
that's
felt
kind of what I
like
meant.
you were a long way away from winning, but you were like, uh, you were we were in the thick of jockeying for the winning position. If that makes any
Yeah,
sense.
yeah. I
Um,
think that's the mid game thing then. Um, there were 2 decisions that I made. Curious what you think. The Abyssal Sight to get rid of your Penpaka,
yeah.
just to prevent you from going into Untamed and fighting me off and gaining an extra 2 amber and getting the captured stuff back.
Hmm.
And then the other decision was, I think it was the Brain Drain turn when I put stealth mode back and fought off all of your Untamed.
I was pretty happy in the first scenario to go into Sanctum there and move the captured creature over. Um, so taking the ostentatious mount, yeah, would have left me with the ability to take that untamed turn. Would have also let you claim that amber from what was it the Hema. I can't remember how it played out there. But I wasn't super upset. But I guess that just means maybe I had a couple turns that were okay. That I could have
Would
taken.
you have gone Untamed if I didn't get rid of the Penpaka?
I think I so what I had 5 in discard. I had 4 Star Alliance in hand. I couldn't have gotten haunted for body if
Right.
you took the like Untamed or Sanctum card. So I don't think Untamed or Star Alliance was super appealing there. Um, Maybe the body was great. Um, and I could have centered the bear, right, and then shipped
Yeah,
over
that's why
a
I got rid of
Yaga.
the Panpaka, because you could have played the Panpaka to give the bear skirmish and centered it and fought off one of my things with captured amber on it, I believe,
Yeah,
and then pass me the Panpaka.
yeah, yeah. I think that makes sense. It makes sense. You let me take that captured Hema Amber, and I got to use the outpost on that Sanctum turn. So that was 6 Amber swing.
I didn't consider you playing just the mount.
Mm-hmm.
I should have considered that. Maybe I should have taken the mount instead.
Nice. Maybe I don't know. The mount's great. I loved having double mount in there. Um,
Yeah.
I don't know. I also just didn't feel great giving you the body. Like I think there were definitely potential for just for you to go into like, all right, I'm going to keep calling Star Alliance and take you off because I just don't have many ways of dealing with it once you've handled my board.
Mm.
Um, and I very much well, it didn't bite me, but I in the end regretted not fighting with the Tesmal
Yeah.
just to get it off the board. I don't think you and reap with it again, but it would be nice. Um,
Did you have a hand of 6 star lines
at which point? No, it
when I
was
when I kept reaping with the Tesmal?
It was 4-2, 4 Star Alliance, and 2 Untamed, and the 2 Untamed were Rapid Evolutions. At one point earlier, had put Halakor on the bottom with my uh,
Future booster.
with the Future Booster. Looking to get into Rapid Evolution when I was trying to angle for like Marmook to counter your big Amber Burst.
Yeah.
Um, but it didn't line up, and I don't know if I, with more foresight, could have left myself the Halakor to have a creature there. But maybe kind of looking back in hindsight, trying to like justify. But
I
uh,
don't think I would have had an answer for a Murmuk with 8 power counters on it.
I mean, I just wouldn't have enough creatures to keep a hold of it. Um,
Yeah, okay.
I mean, I would have had to like give it to you at some point.
Yeah,
Was the
I
worry?
see.
Yeah,
Hmm. And then the other one, what was the second part of that? Yeah, when I took away the stealth mode and fought off your Untamed. Did I
yeah,
sufficiently disrupt that next turn for you?
yeah. And then you push through the piece of cord there.
I don't think. Yes, I pushed through the piece cord that turn. I made sure to give you an unfathomable creature that I could mark of Dis,
Yeah,
and you ended up going to Star Alliance anyway, knowing that your next card was stealth mode,
yeah,
and you ended up warding the Ronnie there
right.
to let me mark the Ronnie.
Yeah, I kind of assumed that Mark was going to get me on an off-house creature one way or another. Um, and I warded the Ronnie, anticipating having to play the Lost in the Wild at some point.
Hmm.
Hopefully on the next turn if I drew it, and didn't want to be giving you too much value back on the reshuffle. So maybe that was a little bit greedy. Um, maybe that was a little bit greedy. I can't remember if I had another. Did I have an unfathomable creature there as well when you marked the Ronnie?
You did. It was one of the Immersioneers, and if I would have marked the Immersioneer, then you could have fought off the body.
Okay,
But warding the Ronnie meant you couldn't kill the body right away.
okay, makes sense. Makes sense. So that was probably a mistake then. Uh, could have left myself in. And you had no way. Yeah, I guess you can't kill the Immersioneer after you mark me into it, or you kind of lose the impact. Uh,
Correct. Yeah.
unless you also ship me another unfathomable creature, but one that's not going to kill the body. Have to be a sign in, I guess.
Yeah, probably the sign in.
Hmm. So unlikely. I
I
can't
don't
remember what you
remember.
had.
Yeah, I don't remember how far it was away from the flank either.
Hmm. Interesting.
But yeah,
Well, it was a lot to think about. It was a cool game. It was a fun one. A fun
I
one.
enjoyed that one.
That was good.
Let's just agree to play Whirlpool every single week this season, right?
Some weeks. we can play it every week. Maybe not in the stream game. Like when you have some random games on TCO, like that's cool, man.
Yeah. I should just play these Vault Masters. They're so much fun.
I'm really enjoying VM 24 in particular.
Yeah,
Um,
that's what I mean. Yeah, these are a blast to play.
yeah, good mix. Seem like they're well balanced. There's nothing that's like too OP. I mean, yeah, okay. I've seen there's like a lot. Can I say a lot of quad routine job decks? But that aside, that aside, yeah, not too bad. Um,
What's the SAS on the one you played?
it is 78. 78.
Mine is a 68.
Oh, well, skill issue over here, I guess.
Yeah.
Skill issue.
Like I said though, I don't think not that SAS for VM is inaccurate in any way. It's just that it's it just seems like a very balanced set that no matter what you're playing, you're gonna have options. You're gonna have ways. Like neither of us had very much C, and so we had to rely on fighting. And
Mm-hmm.
the piece of chords kind of made that very different as well.
Yeah, I like the piece of quartz here. It's decent board presence. Low C, like you were saying. I had 16 pips plus the two piece of chords.
Wow.
I maybe should have just been like discarding creatures and trying to race, but you've got the
Yeah.
lash. You're gonna. I mean, you had fewer pips, but you had the Ronnie, you had the bow, and you
Yep.
had
I had an urchin.
lash was gonna be problematic, and the
Rend.
Brend. So I wasn't like it wasn't obvious that I could outrace you with just relying on pips. And my kind of thinking going in was I needed to get enough value out of the outpost before you found Poltergeist, and it was a card I had early. If you played Whirlpool, um,
Come on.
well, I mean,
I'm not going to discard that, am I?
it's happened at least once.
Um, yeah. I've told the story about how KFC, the last chance qualifier last year, I had a very good Whirlpool deck, and I had so many games during that event where I was like, I know I should discard this right now, but I'm just going to play it.
Yeah,
I
gotta
usually regretted it, but I mean,
gotta do it, I guess. Gotta
got to
do
do
it.
it. Yeah, I'm not going to discard it. Well, all right. Good one. We'll be back next week.
Indeed. You know what? Last note. I gotta get like a whiteboard so we can keep a tally. You get first blood this season. Quick draw.
How about that? We need to go back to the tape and figure out what the actual all-time record is.
I think we can. I think we can leave it with the feeling that I had an overwhelming majority of wins over the last
I'd
two.
say about 80%.
I don't know. I feel like there's probably just a stretch in there where I won like 4 or 5 in a row, and we feel like it was a lot, but it was pretty even.
I think it was more than that.
Oh. Maybe we'll go back to the tape.
Beahawk's right. It's probably 99.
9%. It's 34, 57%. I don't know. Yeah. We'll see.
Yeah, let's get a whiteboard. Let's do it.
Get the whiteboard, the big whiteboard. Maybe we'll put up a host post. Besides, maybe we'll put it up on the website somewhere. Yeah, it'd be fun. All right, folks. Yeah. We'll sign off and say goodnight. Thanks for hanging out. See you on the lab.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.